Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. We're going to talk about a word today that we love to talk about, but we also have a word in front of that word. So hopefully I confused you significantly by now. The word we like to talk about here is success. And it means different things to different people. And I actually have somebody on the show today that put a word in front of that word. And the word they used was systematize success. And I'm like, wow, that's, at first I was kind of like paranoid about it. It seemed like that made me nervous. But then I'm like, you know what? I got to ask this guy. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Christian Banach. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, Dave. How about yourself?
I'm excited to jump into this. I got to say, full disclosure, I'm a little nervous because whenever somebody systematizes something, I think of spreadsheets and 47 steps. So hopefully for my education level, you won't lead us down that road, but I'm excited to unpack this today. And you are principal and chief growth officer at Christian Banach. So what is going on there at that firm today? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for having me on the show. Really excited about this. So Christian Banach, we are a business development and growth consulting firm,
Okay.
and we primarily work with advertising and marketing agencies to, help them land 6- and 7-figure opportunities predictably.
Sure.
And we do that through a mix of both demand generation as well as outbound prospecting to capture the demand that we create.
Okay.
And while we primarily work with advertising marketing agencies, we do a lot of other clients in other categories, but we found a nice niche within the advertising space and
Sure.
have a lot of really great clients there.
Wow, that's so cool. And you're out of Chicago, so hey, I hope things are going well down there. We're just on the other side of the border up here in Wisconsin, so finally no snow for the middle of April, end of April. So hopefully we'll leave it that
Be
way.
careful what you say because it could snow tomorrow, knowing our
I
weather.
know exactly. If it snows tomorrow, they'll be calling me. And I put away my snow blower, Christian, so I already know what that means. Usually within a week, I got to pull it back out. So, but as in preparation for today, before we jump into the systematized success thing, I kind of want to get a background on some of the things that you've gone through because I saw you started some business in high school. And so kind of unpack that for us. I thought that was really a unique perspective that you had there.
Yeah. So I've always had that entrepreneurial bone. I guess you could say I was born with it. I was the kid buying and selling baseball cards in junior high school. And then I started a lawn service, neighborhood lawn service in my area. And then in high school, got the idea. Several friends of mine, we were all going to the teen juice bars and having a good time there. But we saw an opportunity. Why don't we throw our own event? So got a couple friends together. We rented out a banquet hall, booked some DJs, went to every mall, record shop, school in the area, and invited people. And totally on a whim, had no experience in the space, and we had over 1,000 people show up to that first event.
Sure.
And that was basically born the birth of a business that I didn't
Sure.
really set out to have a business at first. It was just throw a party, and that's really how the first couple of years were. I moved on to college. Decided to throw another event, and that became how I paid my way through school. After I graduated, then I did get a job working as a marketing coordinator at a local business here, still doing these parties on the side, and realized I was having more fun and making more money doing this side hustle than I was at the marketing coordinator job. So I ended up quitting that and went all in on the party promotions business. And those parties at that time had now grown from, local banquet halls to nightclubs to concert venues. And we
Wow.
would go on to, produce events with Lady Gaga and Pitbull and other Grammy Award winning artists. And it was great. It was a lot of fun, learned a lot. And you might be thinking, well, how does a guy who's a club promoter and concert promoter go to working with advertising and marketing agencies? Well,
Sure.
what had happened is along the way, we actually got approached by an experiential marketing agency who wanted some help with an activation, and our concert promotions capabilities bode really well with that agency and what they were looking for. So we
Sure.
helped them out. That went over really well. which led to another opportunity with them, which led to another agency finding out about us. So next thing you knew, we were, half the business was our own concerts. The other half were these experiential events for these corporate companies like Allstate and Toyota and, really big organizations. And that was really my entryway into experiential and event marketing and agencies. And that's how things buzzed along for about 15 years. And then what had ended up happening is the 2008 recession hit.
Sure.
And like a lot of the businesses that I consult with now, I did not have a sales process or a system in place. It was all word of mouth and referrals, and that was good enough to get me by until the recession hit. So I then went out, hired a sales consultant. They came in, they helped me really get the processes in place and opened me up to this whole new world that I kind of touched upon, but I never really, dove into, deeply. I really enjoyed it. Business still kind of struggled along for a couple of years. I ended up closing that down and deciding I wanted to go all in on business development. So I went in, started working with different agencies in a business development role, and did that for about 10 years. Realized along the way that my superpower was really generating those kind of top of funnel opportunities, the hunting portion of the business, which a lot of people like the close and the pitch, if you will. And I like that too, don't get me wrong, but I really found that the hunt was even more exhilarating for me. And that's how things went along for a while. And then fast forward, we had the pandemic, and it felt like deja vu all over again, where I was seeing companies going out of business. People that didn't have sales processes were really struggling. The difference this time was I felt like I was the consultant that had helped me 10 years prior, and I could give back. So I ended up moving on from the agency I was working with and starting the company that I have here today to help other agencies and businesses, with their processes.
Wow, that's an awesome journey. And I want to go all the way back to when you were in high school, because I think about like the marketing aspect of it, Christian. I mean, what made you think at that, at that age to, hey, I need to go tell as many people as possible? I mean, because let's face it, that's like not a lot of companies think that. I've seen plenty of people that think all I have to do is open up my, put a shingle out, and there's going to be a line down the road of people waiting for me, right? So, I mean, how did you remember that, where it was like, hey, you guys, let's go and tell the world? I mean, where did that idea come from? Was it just purely in your discussions? You figured you better go get some people?
Yeah, well, it was a scary proposition. We rented this banquet hall out, and let's be honest, it was not a nightclub. Nobody knew would just show up there on their own thinking that there was this event.
Right.
So, it wasn't a lot of money in today's terms, but it was a lot of money for me in high school that we put up. A few $1,000s back then was, a lot of money, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it was a little bit of just survival on how are we going to get an ROI, back from this. And, I'm not, giving away all my money that I have to pay my cars and bills and things that I had at the time. So yeah, it was, a little bit of follow the leader, a little bit too. I mean, we looked at what other clubs and other party promoters were doing. And, at the time, this was, the internet was out, but that was not a channel that really anybody was using. It was really hand-to-hand printed flyers and going to other events and malls and handing those out directly to people and inviting them really at a street level. And, luckily I had a number of friends, and everybody, was really excited about this opportunity, and they all, chipped in. And I think there was one day we actually all ditched school and, just went and, put flyers on cars at all these other schools. So that was.
Do your parents know about this?
I think they know about this now, but at the time I certainly didn't tell them. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry if you're Christian's parents, if you're listening, man, just turn the other cheek real quick, because we'll get back. Sorry about that. Go ahead. Wow. So you knew to go out and do that. And again, that just came natural. And I think it's like what you said, Christian, it's that entrepreneurial bone, because not everybody would know that. Not everybody would understand that. And not, when you talk about ROI in high school, it's like, holy cow, that's kind of unique right there. I mean, were you built that way always, that as far back as you can remember?
I do think I had that, in me for a period of time, for sure. I think back even when I had that lawn service, it was a similar motive, right? Yeah, I
Wow.
would printed out flyers and I went around the neighborhood and knocked on the doors of my neighbors and, offered to, mow their lawn. And if they said yes, or they said they're not interested, whatever, I had handed them a flyer. But I quickly realized that the more doors that I knocked on, the more, lawns I got to cut. So I
Yeah.
think I kind of took that over to the party promotions and knew that the more flyers I passed out and I had my team pass out, the more people might show up to the event.
Wow, that's so cool. And I think you asked a great question, and I really want to ask the audience because I think we're so busy doing whatever we can just to stay afloat at times. But you kind of said, what is your superpower? I mean, you found something that you were really good at, you were passionate about, I'm assuming, and other people identified that as well. So, I just want to, for the people listening, for you to just kind of consider that if somebody asked you that question, what is your superpower? Or if you're building a team, because we talk a ton about teams all the time, if you're building a team, what is their superpower? Individually find out what their superpower is and then use that to their advantage, acknowledge them, praise them for that. I mean, people love to be praised for what they're good at, So when you how did you kind of discover that superpower? Did it just keep coming up for you, or did you just know that from early on?
I think that's an interesting topic, and I've been putting some thought into that recently as well. I think a lot of people with superpowers, they don't realize that it's a superpower initially. They just sort of
Right.
assume that everybody is built this way. And I think for myself, that was the case as well. I had sort of always innately been that hunter. I mean, as a kid in junior high, not afraid to go knock on doors and ask people, to if I could mow their lawn, or, a few years after that, handing out flyers. I didn't realize that other people were intimidated by
Yeah.
that didn't enjoy that. I just thought everybody did. But I think over time, I started to realize that uh, not everybody does, or those that do maybe aren't doing it as well, maybe
Sure.
as I'm doing. So I think, for me at least, that was part of the discovery process, is when I really saw the comparison and between others that maybe weren't as good, or completely didn't want to do it at all. And then from there, it was, wow, I think I have something here. How do I develop this further? And then that, whether it be books or, trainings or coaches, or
Sure.
all of that to, help strengthen that superpower, is at least the journey that I went on.
Sure. Wow. And so many people, I don't know what you think, Christian, but I run into a lot of people that really struggle being able to say, I'm good at, and then fill in the blank. Like it's almost like it's too egotistical. You're too full of yourself. There's like this negative connotation when somebody says, I'm really good at X, you know? And I remember reading Strength Finders and taking that assessment through that. And there were two of the ones that I remember were positivity and connectedness. And I was like, man, you know what? I love connecting one person with another. It just is like a passion. It just comes so natural. When I'm in a room full of people, I'm just, I'm thinking, all right, who needs to meet that person? Who needs to meet that person? And I'm good at it, but boy, I tell you, it takes you a while, doesn't it, to kind of own some of those superpowers? Was that your journey, or were you totally fine saying I'm good at this from day one?
No, no, I was definitely not. I was nervous, to
Yeah,
say that I was good at something, because part of it also is I'm always striving to be better at whatever I'm doing. So even today, it feels a little uncomfortable saying it's my superpower, because I know I can still grow and do better. And there's others out there that are still even better than me at these certain tasks. But I've grown more comfortable with what I've done. I think the results that I can look back on, help confirm that. But, for me, I think being able to demonstrate those results gives me the confidence to come and say that, that I have this, power, if you will, but I think, it's a lot more challenging to do that if you don't have the, proof in the pudding, to back it up.
sure. Well, and most of the heroes that we think of that had superpowers like Batman or Superman, they had normal lives, right? They wore normal clothes until they needed to not. So, I mean, they kind of didn't walk in their superpower at all times. So I totally, I can see how that's hard for people. It's just another encouragement today for you listening. If you are good at something, you know what? You can own it. You can tell people, you can use it to your advantage. It's a strength that you were created with. So why not just use it? I mean, it does take a while. And you're even hearing an expert today say that he still struggles with it, and because we're always trying to get better, right? We're always trying to improve that, whatever we're looking at that moment. So I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that. Did you ever take the Strength Finders piece by chance? Did you ever go through that?
I believe I have. It's been a number of years,
Okay.
since, but I've taken similar type of tests as well. So
And they kind of show that stuff shows up that, business development, hunting, that's that communication with people, that does that, I'm assuming, rise to the top on most of those
yeah,
then.
I've seen some of that, and there's other insights that come. I do encourage your listeners to participate in some of those, because I have some other, I guess, if you case, some superpowers that I didn't realize also were superpowers that I, again, thought everybody, thought and looked at things this way. But it was through those tests that I recognized that, wow, I'm off the charts on this area here, and, have since sort of poked at that and looked at that, further. So I think that could be a very, good channel to identify some things that maybe you don't realize you have.
Yeah.
So whether it's Strength Finders or others that are out there, I think it's definitely worth those types of assessments. Assessments have some value.
Absolutely. And we do a ton of work with DISC, and that's the cool part is, it shows me things about me that I, like you just said, I didn't even know that I had that. It was just kind of natural where, it's just natural for me to communicate with somebody, to go into a conversation and bring up something, whatever, right? In a networking event or wherever. And then you talk to some people that are so afraid of it. They don't think they're going to add any value. They're afraid to speak in public, whatever it is. And neither one's right or wrong. It's just nice to know what your strength is, so you can kind of, lean into that strength and, be able to use that. And today, my gosh, hunting is gotta be a super high sought after. I don't know very many business owners that aren't looking for a hunter to add to their team. So are you kind of grooming people when you see that in them, or do you work with that in your company, finding those types of people, or how does that fit into your day-to-day activity?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We have clients that will hire us, and we will work with their teams to, first and foremost, kind of build a strategy, and then work with the individuals then in that organization, and more or less transfer the knowledge and skills that we have to them. So that's part of the business. Then we have our own internal team. So we act as an agency as well, and we help hunt on behalf of our clients. Some don't want to try to build that skill internally, whether that because of resources or timing or a variety of reasons. So they'll sometimes outsource it to us. So in those situations, they'll come to our team. And so our team, so I'm out there, yes, looking to recruit and hire people that have that, superpower as well. But some of them, most of them, and we all can improve. I improve every day. I learn from my team, as well. So it's also working to develop our own internal team, and bring, those skills and expertise to them as well.
Wow. And you used the word strategy that I kind of want to pivot into, because you created a Propel strategy, I'm going to call it. And you used the PROPEL as an acronym for some different things. So can you walk us through that and how that can help somebody listening today?
Yeah, absolutely. So Propel is think of it as a go-to-market strategy framework. And it could be, what I love about Propel is it's very applicable to businesses, but it could be really applied to almost anything, whether you're out looking for a job, whether even you're trying to date, the overall strategy of it, is very applicable in many areas. And as you mentioned, yes, it's an acronym. The first P of Propel is really the foundation of all of this. And it is pick a pivotal problem. And what I mean by that is ultimately think of it from a business lens. People are coming to you and they have problems that they need to get solved. If they didn't have a problem, then they wouldn't need to engage, with your business. And I work with a lot of clients, and they automatically default to what they do versus the problem that they solve. Like, I build websites.
Sure.
I build a website is not a problem.
Sure.
I need a website is not a problem. Why do you need a website? Well, our traffic is down, our leads are down, our sales are down. Okay, well then building a new website might be, might be the solution to your problem. But ultimately, you really want to get clear on what are the problems that you are able to solve. Ideally, these are problems that are both urgent and important for a business to solve. Because if it's not important, then there might be a problem, but it's not on their priority list, right? Same thing from an urgency standpoint. Is it urgent for them to solve it? Because if it's something that they can solve a year or two down the road, you may not be in business a year or two from now. So you want to focus on those problems that are more urgent. And also what's important is they have to be willing to pay for it to be solved as well. Because again, if it's not on their top priority list, it's probably not the best point to start. So that's really the first foundation, is getting clear. And you may be a business that solves one very specific problem, or there might be multiple problems, but it's really getting clear on that first and foremost is what's key.
Wow. So pick a pivotal problem. So once you've done that, you've identified that in your brain, what's the R stand for?
Yeah, so the R is to really research the audience segments. And what that is all about is, now you know the problems you solve, but who is experiencing those problems? Is it a certain type of company in a certain industry? Maybe it's, tech companies are experiencing this problem, or maybe it's companies in a certain geographic region, or maybe they're, in our world with marketing, advertising, sometimes they're trying to reach a certain demographic. They're trying to reach boomers or millennials, and they're having a problem doing that. So, you want to really get clear and build out your ideal client profile. So what are the types of companies do you best service? Who within those companies should you be targeting? So building out a buyer persona. So it's really doing a lot of research and getting really clear on the different audiences that, you can serve and solve those problems for. And, what we work with a lot of agencies, and a lot of times when we work with them, they're like, oh, we want to work with Tesla and Nike and, all these big brands. And, for some that's definitely in their wheelhouse, but for a lot that might be stretching a little bit too far. So, we really want to make sure that we're level setting, and we call it the right to win audience. Who are the audience segments that you actually have a right to win, by looking at, again, who your past clients were, what your experience level is, the problems that you solve, so on and so forth.
So, and I'm just curious on the audience side, because my disc profile says that I get bored easy, and I totally agree with that. So when somebody tells me to niche down as far as possible, like I had somebody say, if you could just sell the left-handed blue-eyed plumbers, you would be able to niche. That's about how niche you should be. And I'm like, I try it and I get bored super easy, right? So I guess my question is, for people listening, can you be too broad or too narrow on your audience when you start thinking about that? What's your advice to people that are thinking about their audience, but they don't know if they're in the right spot?
Yeah, I do advise niching. Now, I think you can take it too extreme. Your example, I think, would definitely be too extreme, but you can also be too broad. You really want relevance. So when you are sending a message, when you're out there hunting, you want them to realize, wow, this person understands me. They understand, my problems that I'm experiencing. And, if you go too broad, there's just so much competition out there. It's really hard to stand out. So, we do advise that. Now, does that mean you can only focus on one category? No. I don't know if I would advise going all in on one category, because if there is some sort of market conditions that affect that industry, you might be in trouble. But at the same time, if you're a very small business just getting started off, even us are still in that bucket. We don't have the resources to properly build a sales and marketing engine for multiple categories right now. So our focus is mainly on one, and we have some ideas on where we're going to be expanding here soon. So I think it's striking the right balance between the two. It also a little depends on your your price point. If you're a very expensive product, then maybe you can niche down further. If
Sure.
it's, less expensive, then maybe you want to, broaden it out a little bit. So there's a lot of variables to consider. But ultimately, though, you do want to have some sort of specialization.
Well, and we as consumers are kind of slapped with the exact opposite, Christian. I mean, let's face it, you can go to a big box store and get your tires changed and your teeth cleaned at the same time. So it's like, wow, how do I like use, and that's their success. I'm assuming that they're successful at it. But so that's what I think we look at and think I have to be all things to all people. So that's a hard balance. Do you help people kind of really hone in on the right audience for their product and their service?
Yeah, we do. We do. And to answer your question about the big box, like if you have Walmart's marketing budget, by all means, go for, being all things to all people. But I don't have Walmart's,
Sure.
budget, and I'm sure most of the listeners here don't as well. But yes, we part of the work that we'll do with clients is to help them find those niches that they have. What we call a right to win, and it's usually looking at your past experience, where your passions are, what your team, if you have a team, what their experience happens to be. And then, you can look at other adjacent categories. Maybe you have automotive experience. Well, that can maybe be applied to, parts or car washes or other things that are related, but maybe not necessarily in the exact same category.
Sure. Gotcha. That's awesome. So yeah, so if you are listening and you're struggling with your audience, where you should be, or where success is taking you, I think Christian would be a great resource to kind of bounce that off. So thanks for sharing that. So then the O piece, after we pick a pivotal problem and then we do the research, what's the O stand for in your system?
Yeah. So always own the journey. And what we mean by that is there's a buyer's journey that's happening, and put yourself in your consumer hat. You may be in the market to buy something. And we would call that being like the decision stage. You've decided you want to buy a car. You are visiting, a few different lots, and you're going to make your final decision. Now that, from our experience, especially in the B2B space, is probably only about 3% of the market that is in market right now to buy. There's a whole other 97% of them that is not yet in the market, but they are still on a buyer's journey. So they may be experiencing some sort of problem. They're not really sure what the solution happens to be, because there's a lot of different potential solutions that you could explore to serve, to have the same problem solved. So there's the awareness stage. Then from there, they would move into the consideration stage, that now they've narrowed down maybe the problem and the solution that they have, and they're looking at some different competitors. And then again, there's that final decision-making stage. So in this part of our process, it's really starting to identify what are those different stages for your audience, and what are the topics, the questions that they have along each one of those stages, because you're going to want to create content around each one of those different stages to help educate the buyer and bring them along that journey with you.
Wow. So, and I want to go back to something you just said, because then I want to make sure, did you pick that 3% number just out of your head, or is there a bunch of research? Because that sounds kind of daunting, to think that there's only 3% of my target audience is actually looking right now for my product. Is that backed by research? I'm assuming.
Yeah. There's a book called Sticky Branding that has done some research into that, and that's where I had initially had seen that. I've seen some other reports that say 5%, but it's in that 3 to 5% ranges from what I've seen.
Wow, that's scary. I mean, and it can be exciting, but I guess if you take the US population, if that's your target, and take 5% of it, they're actively looking, that's really encouraging. But I think about the 97%, and I'm thinking, how do I get them? How do I get them involved? So so once you own that journey and people are in that decision-making stage, what's the second P then in your strategy?
Yeah. So the second P is to provide value. And it's really not just about the decision-making stage. It's about each one of those stages. And, the content that you provide them, you want to be educating that buyer to help move them along that journey. Because the thing about the 3%, while it's great that they're in market, if they don't already know you, you're competing with all these other vendors that are out there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you focus on the other 97%, and you educate them when they are first thinking about their problem, thinking about, how to solve the problem, and you're the guide, the resource that they're using to educate themselves, when they're ready to buy, they won't even look at other vendors because you've already built, they know you, they like you, they trust you. So what we find though, especially from a hunting standpoint, you can't just go to a prospect and say, hey, we'd love to get 15 minutes on your calendar and tell you all about us and all the awards we've won and how great our people are.
Sure.
You sound like everybody else that's out there, and it's not compelling for anybody. We're just too inundated with messages these days.
Right.
So we really advise our clients to take a look at, what is your point of view? Do you have a proprietary tool or process or thought leadership or expertise or something, again, around solving that pivotal problem? And then you can go to this prospect and say, hey, we think you might be experiencing this problem. We got this really interesting workshop that we'd like to offer you as a way to get to know each other and share some insights around how to solve that problem. Or maybe you've done some original research, or you could do a free audit. But the idea here is that you're going to approach them and give them something. We also call it a give to get. You're going to give them something to get something back, and
Sure.
what you want to get back is their time, so you
Yeah.
can actually start to get them in your funnel and start to build a relationship with them.
So I gotta ask you this because did you have to throttle your ROI bone back a little bit when you're talking about value? Because I feel like providing value can prolong a sale. Not that it has to, but it can. So like, did your ROI, was that like a battle for you? Like I want to get this done, but I need to provide value. Was that a conflict for you at all?
I think it was. I think I learned a little bit of the hard way. We want everybody to, adhere to our timeline. We have a quarterly number that we want to hit.
Yeah.
But the reality is, once you really start to do some research around the buyer journey and understand some of the metrics, it just makes sense. And just using yourself as an example, think about how you make decisions. And granted, we're not talking about buying a stick of gum, at the grocery store. That's an impulse buy. That's different. But when we're talking about anything, with a high average contract value or even a medium, there's a process that goes along. Most people don't even just go to the store and buy a TV, right? They might jump online. They're going to research, and compare and contrast. There's a process that goes, involved here. And you really have to have a long-term, thought process here. And, we've actually started talking about our process as relationship making. That's really what we're trying to do is, systematize the way to make relationships with prospects. And it can be hard sometimes when you have goals and numbers to hit. But you really have to have that long-term, viewpoint. And if you've done a good job of doing this and building your pipeline, then you don't really have to make that next sale, that next conversation, the sale, because you've already invested time, months and years in the past. And those opportunities are now starting to come to life. And those are the ones that'll make you hit your revenue goals. You don't have to rely on the next conversation to have you hit the goal.
Well, and so that's a great point. For an established business, it's probably a little bit easier. For somebody just starting out, it reminds me of that cartoon, Christian, where there's those two birds, I think they were buzzards, standing there saying, patience my ass, I want to kill something. I mean, they don't want to wait till the right time or till the time that they're supposed to do whatever they're supposed to do. So if you're listening and you don't provide value right now, that might be a foreign concept because it feels like it's delaying that gratification of a closed sale. But I think, that's a great point to make sure that you are providing value. Otherwise, you may be a one and done type scenario, right? Where you don't get that repeat buyer and you're not getting that loyal following because people aren't seeing that value. So that's awesome. The E then in your PROPEL strategy, what does that stand for?
So that's evaluate channels. And by channels, we mean marketing channels. There are countless ways that you could reach a consumer these days, right? You could, send them an email. You could do a cold call. You could knock on their door. You can go to an event. You can run an ad on TikTok. You could send a LinkedIn message. There are a lot of channels out there, and each audience is typically primarily living on multiple channels, but some they are on more than others. Some they may not be on at all. And it's really critical to pick one or two channels, and do the research into where your audience is, and really go all in on those one or two channels. Because again, you probably don't have the resources to do all of them. So, and you don't want to spread yourself too thin, because you're just not going to leave, enough of an impression on the audience. So, so once you've kind of done all of this, the other work, it's really getting clear on, all right, I'm going to focus on email, I'm going to focus on LinkedIn or whatever, again, whatever's right for your particular audience, and build that strategy out. And that's really what the evaluate channels is really all about.
So to kind of dig a little deeper on that one, if there's 10 channels, let's say I'm an average entrepreneur business owner listening, and all the channels that you just mentioned are viable in my mind, because let's face it, I don't know if I'm a B2B type of business, and I'm looking for other business owners. I'm not sure where they hang out. I think they're on LinkedIn. I feel like they might be on Facebook, but I'm not sure. Where do people go to really kind of cement that channel usage rather than it being a dartboard like I think people are here? How do you kind of help people really nail that down? Is there any tips that you have for people listening?
Yeah. I would say the most effective by far is to go to the prospects, and ask them directly. We will oftentimes do for our clients or advise our clients to do stakeholder type interviews where you set up a 30-minute call. The idea is not to close the business or even, sell your business at all, but it's just to try to gain insights into their whole buying process, and, what are the questions that they have at those different stages of the buyer journey. What type of content do they like to consume? Are they more into video or text or short form, long form? And then also, what are the channels? Where are they living? Are they in online communities? Are they going to events? What are the social channels they use? That is by far the most fruitful. If you could have 10, 20 conversations, you would be shocked at the insights that come out of that. So I would definitely advise that. Is it a lot of work? Does it take time? Yes. But, if your business is important to you, it's worth the investment. Beyond that, there's a lot of research that's out there on the internet alone. Just by Googling some things, you can get a pretty good picture in most situations on where your audience is already, living. It's obviously not going to be as great as talking directly to these prospects, but you can at least directionally find some areas to explore through internet research in most cases.
Sure. Wow, that's awesome. I remember one of the companies that I owned, we actually created a customer advisory council where we took our 10 or 12 different customers. Some were big, some were small, but kind of a cross section. We met quarterly, and they all met as a group, and they got to know each other, and it was so helpful to get their perspective. And it's crazy how hard it is sometimes to convince a business owner to talk to your customer. Now, obviously, if you're Taco Bell, it's really hard to talk to your customer because you have millions probably in a day. But when you're a small business owner or medium-sized business owner and you have a finite number of customers, there's ways that you can, find out what you need to find out from them. And it just looks good, I think, Christian, that if I was somebody's, if I was your customer and you were calling me to, say, hey, I care about your journey, I care about your business, I care about your experience, can you fill me in on a few things? I'd feel pretty darn good about that. So we're always worried we're going to be an interruption in their day. But at the end of the day, I don't you see more customers open and happy to help than shut down and get the heck out of here?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have existing clients, I would absolutely go to them. They have a vested interest in your success too. And if you can frame it that way, that, you're looking to grow and evolve and develop further, and, what they share with you will very well, could impact their business. So they have skin in the game too.
Yeah, that's so cool. So as we finish the propel, what's the L then stand for?
Yeah, so the L is launch, experiment, and then scale. And the first, L, the launch portion of it is critical because while I am a firm believer in strategy, measure twice, cut once, I find sometimes people over strategize and they never actually do what they said that they were going to do.
Sure.
So yes, this is a good process and we want to go through it, but unless you actually put it in the market, it's worthless, right? And when you put it in market, I think we do a great job of strategy and we get it pretty right, but you're always going to learn. The market is at the end of the day going to dictate and tell you if you got it right or wrong or how to pivot. So you just got to get it in the market. And we like to treat these all as experiments, right? There's a lot of variables we talked about, different types of content, different problems, different audiences, channels. View these all as experiments. And what you're looking to try to then do is you're trying to see positive signals that come out of these, and that could really range, right? We don't need to get into what those signals, happen to be, but you'll get a sense of this, if this is working or not. And
Right.
if it is working, double down on it. If it's not working, you need to evaluate, is this something that we just need to pivot on, make some slight changes, or is this really just not working and we need to abandon this and try something else? And again, so those things that are working, you want to scale it and double down on it. And as you grow your business and you get more resources, you can run more and more experiments. But in the beginning, you may only have 1, 2, 3 different experiments that you're running at any given time.
Wow. And I'm assuming that you can make different words out of these. Like I see rope in there and I see these words that if you don't use all of them, you can get yourself into trouble. So you can do the PROPE and skip the launch, like you said, and it's really kind of a futile experience. So, that's where the systemization comes in. There is a pre-done method for you. So if somebody's listening right now, Christian, and they are interested in this, but they don't know where you fit in, do you come alongside these people, help them through this? What does that look like from your end?
Yeah, we'll work with clients in really one of 3 ways. One way would be where we are brought in and we will just help guide the strategy for them. And then the expectation is that we're teaching them how to fish type of an approach, right?
Sure. Okay.
That's one side. We have another side where we're brought in and we do it for them. Again, they may not have the time, the resources to hire internally, whatever happens to be, and we're doing it for them. Obviously, with still some level of collaboration. And then we have another situation where it's more of a hybrid model, where, we may, we're working on this together. There might be some parts that we own more, some parts that they own more. So I wouldn't say there's like a one size fits all, but, some, depending on where they're at in their business, need more help than others. So any one of those 3 scenarios is typically how we work with our clients.
That's so cool. And so if you're listening and something is kind of stirring within you, I always say every week, don't just jump into your next activity. Do something with what you just heard, whether it's reach out to Christian, whether it's jump on his website, take some notes, journal some of your thoughts that are going on right now. But, it's interesting. People invest time on podcasts and then it's almost like how many can I consume in a day? And you kind of lose, well, what I just learned. And so I don't know, for myself, I'm trying to consume less but actually put into practice more, because I was at like a book a month clip and it just didn't add value in my life. It was fun, it was like a little badge I could wear, but at the end of the day, I look at my books and I'm like, I remember reading that, but I couldn't tell you what it's about. I mean, what that good was that, right? So I just want to encourage somebody listening to really lean in, take this to heart, and if it feels right, reach out to Christian. So if somebody does want to learn more about you, get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the best spot would be our website. So it's my name, christianbanach.com. On there, there's a lot of great free resources that talk about, what we just went over here today. There's a masterclass that takes this all a level deeper. That's completely free. We have a weekly newsletter that comes out that also shares insights. You can register on the website as well. Or if you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn, Christian Banach on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions. If you want to send me a message, send me a request. So either one of those two would be great places to start.
That's awesome. And you can spell his last name Banach. So it's christianbanach.com. How cool is that? A free masterclass. So again, if you're listening and you want to learn more, what a great spot to go and learn more about this strategy, to see how it fits into your business. So thank you so much, Christian, for investing this time today. Thanks for all you're doing in this. And man, it would have been interesting to interview you in like 7th grade and see, how closely aligned you are with that kid. I bet you there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of alignment that's going on. So so cool that you shared those stories with us, and thanks again for all you're doing.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.